Thank you so much for watching. Let's get into this right now. James Ashby, of course, is with One Nation, and he, for his sins, is in Canberra a lot. But more importantly, he's in Yeppoon right now, and that's more to his liking, I think. The wonderful Linda Scott is, of course, free of all of her responsibilities in local government, so she is just a passionate Labor supporter. Is that how we refer to you now,
Just a normal human
Just a normal human being, free to speak in whatever way you do. Welcome back for 2025. So, I mentioned this last week, James, in great chapter and verse, about, you know, the very effective, I'm not going to pretend it's not, very effective sort of lie that Labor and Labor supporters have been able to put out there about Peter Dutton and the policies in and around the fringe benefits tax and who can claim it and who can't when it comes to business lunches, right? So again, one of them was sort of, you know, workers paying for bosses to have their lunches, pretending that it was cigars and red wine. The reality is that the extreme number of businesses in the country are small businesses. Of those, an extreme majority are sole traders. It would mean that if you know, I took you out to the local pub because you're my biggest customer, I wanted to say thank you, I wouldn't pay fringe benefits tax on the schnitty that I bought, okay? Now, Labor has worked out that every single sole trader will apparently have $20,000 to spend on lunch over the year, and if all of them do it at once, then we get to the big number of multiple billions. It also works that it helps a sector that is dying in the arse, and that is the cafe sector, the small restaurant sector. So that's why I like the policy, but we get more data today about just how many cafes are starting to fall apart. As we showed last week on the show, a huge number of them feel that they are right on the line of financial stress. And even this weekend I was talking to people running these businesses saying, of course, people aren't spending because they don't have the money to spend. So that's why I like the idea. James, what do you think about the picture in and around cafes, and whether Labor's already won this one because people think it's about bosses and workers getting screwed over?
Well, last night we had a round of cards with a few friends at home, and you know, just sat around talking to real people, real business people. One of those people said in the last 6 months they've had to tip in $90,000 of their own money into a business that's going backwards at a rapid rate of knots. And very similar sort of industry, hospitality. So this is real, and there'll be plenty of people out there that have only sort of just shut shop with their fish and chip shop, or you know, one of those cafes that stays open for a few late meals or whatever, and they'd all be feeling the pinch right now. And they're working bigger, longer hours themselves as business owners just to try and cut back on wages, rents up. Of course, we all know what the predicament's like when you try and borrow money from a bank. So it's tough out there, and while the money is tight, people are pulling their purses in and saying, I'm not going to spend as much. I'm going to make a cut sandwich and go to work rather than buy every day. So it is having an impact. And as for, you know, the dirty tactics of Labor here is suggesting that this is just a free lunch for business people. No, it is the workers that get the benefit. And I know that later this week, One Nation will be dropping a policy ahead of the election specifically to deal with small business in this area. Well,
I've got to say, you know, I mentioned them. I mentioned you by name and Pauline by name last week. A couple of amazing ideas. We'll talk about that in the next segment here. Linda, again, the hospitality sector, and apart from anything else, right, this is the place where the 17-year-old gets their first job, right? If all of this stuff slowly but surely disappears, then we're going to be in a world of trouble. What is the fault of my logic here?
No, look, we know that Australians are under substantial pressure, you know, and of course global inflation means that these things are really difficult. But I think if you compare what it's like for Australians and small businesses now compared to what it would have been like had Dutton's ideas for the last few years gone forward, people would have been thousands of dollars worse. He opposed all those personal tax cuts. He opposed energy bill relief. He's opposed so many Labor cost of living relief measures that have made a real difference to people's lives. They've kept
the tax cuts were $14 a week.
Small businesses open for a longer period of time because people have had support through the personal taxation system. We can all look at these things and find individual stories. It's very difficult, but the fact is Labor chooses to support individuals, people, families, and this is a proposal that would run through bosses and benefit bosses first.
Yeah, but okay. But if you're the sole trader, you don't have $20,000, right? Like you've got, remember, I mean, and certainly even if you're a small employer, you've only got a couple of people, right? is that you're paying everyone else before you pay yourself. These people don't have a reservoir of 20. If you're the local hairdresser you don't have a reservoir of $20,000 to throw up against the wall on Dom. It's about not copying it from the tax system when you spend $20.
We've got more inequality in Australia now, and again, around the world, than we ever have.
I like that it's all cyclical now. It was very personal 3 years ago. It was all Scott Morrison's fault. Now it's global factors.
Well, it is global factors.
Yeah, but it was 3 years ago.
Inflation
it was 3 years ago.
And you can't argue that Australia has more billionaires, more very, very profitable...
Well, what's the Labor Party's policy on billionaires?
Well, look, I think
that's Greens' policy to turn around, find a billionaire, shake them as much as possible. The billionaires own the companies that actually pay the tax. But I digress. Sorry, your final thought on this.
I don't think it's a good policy because I think that it just does give an advantage to bosses over workers. And I think it is important. Just as Michael Kroger, ironically, was arguing earlier in your show, I've never heard Michael Kroger argue he's a blue-collar worker, but he was wearing a blue collar, so there we go. But it's more important to give workers a better deal. And this policy does the opposite of that. It moves Australian tax money, as you said, $10 billion if all the businesses eligible take their rights.
If the local hairdresser with an ABN spends $20,000 on entertainment,
and you're taking it away from workers.
Look, I love when you hold the line, but that is a line not worth holding. But I appreciate that you're holding it. Okay, so there was a meeting over the weekend between the United States and America, and it seemed like one of the ways to get on side was to bring the deposit check with them. $800 million handed over as one of the early payments of the AUKUS arrangements. James, again, even those of us that support the idea of all of this, the reality of what is it, $300 billion, but of course we'll never see it in the budget. It's all in the off-budget investment bit. That's a very large chunk of change.
Oh, it's a huge amount of money, but if you want to put it into perspective, it's the same amount of money that we spend every week on NDIS. So there's some perspective for people at home.
Great
$800 million. So when you look at it like that, yes, it's still a lot of money. The other point I'll make is it was supposed to be $500 million, but because of the really pathetic exchange rate that we've got here in the country, it's worth $800 million Australian dollars. So, it's only getting dearer and dearer and dearer to do business in this country, and we're talking about subs here, of course, but if you're a business that brings in building materials or anything, we bring in so much material across the country, all those prices have gone up too. So it's an outrageous amount of money, 16% effectively as a deposit that's been paid last week. And yeah, of course, it's to keep Australia in the good books with Trump. Only weeks before we go into caretaker mode, I might just add.
Yeah, very, very good to know. Very good to know. All right.